Have you ever wondered who really controls the money in your pocket? It's a question that leads down a fascinating and some might say unsettling rabbit hole. Today we were pulling back the curtain on one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, the Federal Reserve. But we're not starting in a grand government building in Washington, D.C. No, our story begins on a secluded private island off the coast of Georgia. The year is 1910. The place, Jekyll Island. Picture this, a secret getaway, so exclusive that its membership consisted of the wealthiest families in America, the Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts. In November 1910, a small, elite group of men boarded a private train car under the cloak of darkness. They used only their first names to conceal their identities. Who were these mystery men? They were Senator Nelson Aldrich, a powerful politician and father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr. Piatt Andrew, the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, and a handful of the most powerful bankers on Wall Street, representing nearly a quarter of the world's wealth at the time. Their destination, the Jekyll Island Club. Their mission, to draft a plan that would reshape the American economy forever. For 10 days, these men debated, argued, and hammered out a blueprint. Officially, the goal was to prevent future financial panics like the one that had crippled the nation in 1907. The public was told this new system would stabilize the economy, protect small banks, and serve the interests of the American people. But was that the whole story? What if the primary goal wasn't just about stability for all, but about protection and power for a select few? This is the forbidden truth of the Federal Reserve. It wasn't born out of a public debate in Congress. It was conceived in secret by the very bankers it would supposedly regulate. To understand why they went to such lengths, we have to look at the financial landscape of the time. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were rocked by a series of bank runs and financial crises. When panic struck, people would rush to withdraw their money, and banks, which only keep a fraction of deposits on hand, would collapse. The Panic of 1907 was the final straw. It was so severe that the entire U.S. financial system was brought to its knees, saved only by the private intervention of one man, J.P. Morgan. He personally organized a bailout, strong-arming fellow bankers into lending money to stabilize the system. While Morgan was hailed as a hero, the crisis exposed a massive vulnerability. The nation's financial stability depended on the whims and resources of a single private citizen. The public demanded reform. But the big Wall Street banks saw something different. They saw an opportunity. They realized that while they had the power to stop a crisis, they were also vulnerable to them. A system that could protect them from their own risky behavior, a lender of last resort that could bail them out whenever they got into trouble, would be the ultimate insurance policy. They didn't want a truly independent government regulator. They wanted a system they could control from the inside. And so, the Jekyll Island Plan was born. The proposal they drafted called for a Federal Reserve System. It sounded official, governmental, but the structure was pure genius from their perspective. It would be a central bank with regional branches. Crucially, these regional reserve banks would be owned and controlled by the private commercial banks in their district. This meant the bankers themselves would be on the boards, setting policies and overseeing their own industry. It was like letting the foxes design and guard the henhouse. It created a bankers' cartel with the official seal of the U.S. government. The architects of the plan knew they had a public relations problem. The American public was deeply suspicious of concentrated power, especially from Wall Street bankers. So, they had to sell their plan carefully. When Senator Aldrich presented the bill to Congress, it was initially met with fierce opposition. Progressives and populists immediately recognized it for what it was: a plan to consolidate the power of big finance. The bill stalled, but the creators were patient. They waited for the political winds to change. Their chance came with the 1912 presidential election. With the Republican Party split, Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, won the presidency. Wilson had campaigned on a platform of reform and curbing the power of big business. It seemed like the bankers' plan was dead. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The powerful financial interests didn't give up. They just changed tactics. They worked behind the scenes, co-opting the language of reform and influencing key figures in the new administration. The original Aldrich plan was repackaged and relabeled as the Glass-Owen Bill, which eventually became the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. It had some cosmetic changes. A central governing board would be appointed by the president in Washington to give the appearance of public control. The core structure, the privately owned regional banks, and the immense influence of the financial industry remained intact. President Wilson, believing he had achieved a major progressive reform, signed it into law on December 23, 1913, when much of Congress was already home for Christmas. The bankers had gotten exactly what they wanted. So what did they know? What was the deeper understanding these architects had? They knew this system would fundamentally change the nature of money and debt in America. By creating a central bank that could create money out of thin air to lend to the government and other banks, they were creating a system of perpetual debt. When the government needed money, it would issue bonds. The Fed would buy these bonds, essentially printing new money to do so. This money would then enter the economy through the banking system. This process, known as monetizing the debt, has profound consequences. First, it leads to inflation. When the money supply increases faster than the production of goods and services, the value of each dollar goes down. Your savings are worth less. Your cost of living goes up. It's a hidden tax that disproportionately affects the poor and the middle class. The wealthy, who own assets like stocks, real estate, and businesses, often see their net worth increase during inflationary periods, widening the gap between the rich and everyone else. The creators of the Fed understood this dynamic perfectly. Second, they knew it would create a permanent partnership between the government and big banks, fueled by debt. The government could now spend far beyond its means without having to directly tax its citizens for the full amount. This enables massive government programs and, historically, has made financing wars much easier. The banks, in turn, profit from this endless cycle of lending and interest payments. The Federal Reserve became the ultimate backstop, ensuring that its member banks, the big players, would never be allowed to fail. This concept is now known as too big to fail. We saw it in 2008, and the framework for it was laid all the way back in 1910 on that secluded island. The architects of the Fed knew they were creating a system where financial power would become more and more concentrated. They knew it would shift risk from private banks to the public taxpayer, and they knew it would give them unparalleled influence over the economy and, by extension, politics. This wasn't a conspiracy theory concocted in the shadows. It was a deliberate and brilliant strategy, documented in their own writings and letters. Paul Warburg, one of the key bankers at the Jekyll Island meeting, later admitted in his memoirs how the plan was carefully designed to avoid the appearance of being a central bank controlled by Wall Street. The story of Jekyll Island isn't just a dusty piece of history. It's the origin story of the financial world we live in today. It explains why we have booms and busts, why our money seems to be worth less every year, and why the same large financial institutions seem to get bailed out time and time again. They knew. They knew they were creating a system that would benefit the few at the expense of the many, all under the guise of public service and stability. They built a private club and put a government sign on the front door. For over a century, we've all been paying the dues. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's best-kept secrets. If you found this information as fascinating and important as I do, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel for more content that challenges the official story. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You think the Fed serves the public interest? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious.